Welcome to Microsoft Teams, the Quick Start Guide webinar. I'm going to be presenting today. My name is Jesse. Just before I get started, I just wanted to mention that a huge thank you for joining us today. I'm also working from home like most of you, and I hope you and your families are doing well and staying healthy. With the outbreak, we are very concerned with everyone's health and well-being. We know for a lot of people it's hard to get used to new technology, especially if you're doing it in your own home. We wanted to help you all get up and running with Teams and some basics to get you started. All of our public and private classes have moved online and are being done virtually with live instructors. Even courses that normally don't involve computers, like our professional skills classes, are being done virtually. At the end of the webinar, before I take some questions, I will also show you some more resources that will help you out with doing a lot of stuff virtually from home. Alrighty, so just going into it, before we go into our outline today, I just wanted to give you a little bit about myself. I'm fairly new with the company, although I'm not the newest member anymore, but I am incredibly excited to be with us. Since I've joined, I've been working here for about 7 or 8 months now. And it's so incredibly refreshing to see a whole group of people that are more focused on the students than there are anything else in this company. So I'm super happy to be here. My personal favorite thing about training, as you can see at the very bottom there, is just to watch everybody as their light bulbs go off. Really, that really is my favorite part about training. And I'm being honest about that. And of course, you guys are going to realize how much time you're going to be saving at work while you're taking your training. That part's just a little sales part, but I do like the light bulbs part. Just a fun fact about myself, I'm a huge coffee nerd. You will notice that. A lot of my examples throughout some of my courses, and this course specifically, this webinar specifically, are going to be coffee business related. But I'm also a competitive pool player. Enough about that. Enough about me, because we're going to talk more about JN Software and CompuEase. So they are sister companies that provide services throughout Canada. JN Software offers training, consulting, and database development Canada-wide, whereas CompuEase, they're more Ottawa and the National Capital Region. Okay, so JN Software, they provide training, online public classes, live instructor, of course, just like me. I'm live right now. And private and online and on-site training. I do like to stress the private stuff, just simply because you get to bring your own files to do with the training, so we can actually help you out with that. The public training is great. I love the public training, and in the consulting and database development with JN is also offered with JN Software. CompuEase provides on-site public training at our downtown Ottawa training center. Now, of course, right now, everything's being done online for obvious reasons. But we also always have been doing online training since I started with the company, and definitely before that as well. We also do private one-on-one training, either on-site or online. What they both offer, though, is fast, quality customer service, highly skilled, experienced professional trainers, public classes with guaranteed to run classes that run often. What I mean by guaranteed to run, which means that if only one person's registered, we're still going to run the course. It doesn't really matter how many people are registered in the course. So it just means that everything's going to run. We also have a learner comeback free policy on all public classes. We do offer 24/7 after training support for those questions that you get. Of course, if you're like me, you remember your questions as soon as you get back to your office or when you get home. So we do offer the 24/7 after training support as well. And we do have software and professional skills training. So not just Teams like I'm showing you today, or Excel or Word. We also have a lot of professional skills training to help you out there too. Now, a little bit more about today. We're going to go over it is a quick start guide, so we're just going to give you an overview of Teams, how Teams works. It's going to work very similarly in a lot of ways to a lot of other chat programs, but it's a lot more focused towards businesses. So I'm going to show you some of the features to do with the business side of things. So I'm going to show you, of course, getting started working with chat in a lot of detail. And then I'm going to go into some demos about the actual Teams component. So the Teams component is going to be very business focused. And of course, meetings, which is nicely integrated with Microsoft Outlook. Okay. And my last slide is just about contacting us. So you can see here we've got some numbers up there that you can use to contact us and some email addresses. I'm going to show that again at the very end of the presentation. And I'm also going to show that to you on our websites later on as well. So don't worry if you're not taking this down fast enough, because I'm going to go over those that contact information. A couple things that I like to mention as well is if you do have any technical questions, direct them to, I guess she's using Angela Franco's account. Her name is Mel, but she's using Angela Franco's account. So direct them to Angela Franco. And any questions related to Teams, direct towards me. So you can use the chat box in the Ring Central meeting to do those questions. Now, keep in mind, this is a live webinar. So what I'm going to be doing is at the very end, I'm going to be looking through all those questions. I'm going to pick out the questions and answer each and every one of them. So as long as they're related to Teams, I'm going to make sure to cover that, and we can do a Q&A session at the end of the course. Yeah, so and that includes asking me to repeat certain things, or if you didn't catch something, let me know. That sort of thing, okay? So just getting started with Teams, why don't I just flip over to the Teams interface. And as you can see here, this is what you're going to see when you first log in. Actually, you're on the activity tab right here. So as you can see here, this is everything to do with Teams. Right now, it looks fairly simplistic. We're going to go through a bunch of features that makes Teams kind of stand out as well. But before you do that, you have to get used to the navigation of Teams. So Teams is a chat tool, very, very good, especially if you're working remotely and that sort of thing. But it's good for just general team chat as well. So you can see up at the very left-hand side, you've got a few different tabs, one being Activity. With the Activity tab, it's showing everything that's happened recently for your user. You've also got a Chat tab, which is going to show all of your informal chats. So if I just click on that, it's taking a little bit to flip over there. Sorry, Chat. There we go. Sorry about that. So as you can see here, when you click on Chat, it's going to get, oh man, there we go. Chat. I think it was just lagging a little bit behind there. So the Chat tab is going to provide all of your chat information. Your Teams tab is going to be more specific towards groups. As you can see here, I've got a project management team, I've got a marketing team, I've just got a general coffee knowledge base team going on there. So we'll go over that in a lot of detail in a second. Your Calendar tab is going to actually integrate with Outlook. So let me see if something's just... So the Calendar tab is going to work with Outlook, which means that as you are... Oh man, things are going behind. Just give me a second here. I'm going to close down a couple of my things going on. Let's see, calls. Yeah, that's going better now. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that, guys. I had a little bit computer troubles there. That's what happens when you're presenting live, of course. Okay, so your Teams, I explained that. Your Calendar, as you can see, it's going to actually integrate with Outlook. So it looks a lot like your Outlook calendar. And you've got your meetings that are showing up here. You can join your meetings using the buttons like join and that sort of thing. And so it's going to, anytime that you do add in a meeting with your calendars option, it actually adds all of that information to your Outlook account as well. If you do invite people to meetings using Teams, that will also send invites the traditional way using Outlook too, at the same time as it's using Teams. So everything to do with your calendar is integrated with Outlook. The calls is just a basic overview of calls. Your files is just going to show everything that you've been working on with files, but I'm going to show you other ways to access files that might be a little bit easier. And finally, navigation-wise, the last thing that I want to show you here is a nice search. The search is amazing because the search is actually going to go through. One of the nice things about Teams is that it's persistent, meaning that any chat that you've got going on is always going to be saved there. You don't have to worry about it disappearing. So if you are searching for something, I know I typed in, blog articles. So I'll type in blog in my search, and you can see all of my chat options where I use the word blog, including files and that sort of thing. So it's going to go through everything, very similar to how Outlook would go through everything. Now, how I want to start out with the actual functionality of Teams is I want to start out on my chat tab over here. And you can see there's going to be a list of different chats. To start a new chat, it's just a matter of clicking on the little pencil button at the very top. It says new chat. That's going to bring you into a chat that looks very similar to what you're seeing here. And these are going to be informal chats. So this is just going to be text that you want to share with your team members. You can also add in other team members here by clicking on the add people button at the very top. Now, my name, just so that you understand that, is Student 1 in this application. And of course, I'm going to be chatting with Student 2 and let's just say Student 4. Now, of course, when you do get back to your desk and you're using Teams, those names will be actual people's names. But for now, we just have general Student 1, Student 2, Student 3, 4, that sort of thing. Okay. So now I'm chatting with Student 1. Well, I am Student 1. I'm chatting with Student 2 and Student 4. I can just type in at the very bottom, and this is going to work like a lot of other chat options. So, hi, I would like to discuss HR practices and processes. Now, with this, one thing I like to mention while you are typing, if you have somebody specific that you would like to notify, you can actually use the @ symbol. This is, again, very similar to a lot of other chat options. So right now I could say @student2, and what's going to happen is when I send that off, that mention, it's called a mention when you use the @ symbol and their name, is going to, one, make sure that the person is notified. So it's kind of a next level of notification. And two, you'll see that it will show up in Student 2's activity list. So it's actually showing up in their feed as well when you use that mention. Okay. So now Student 2 could go in, and you're not seeing them on a separate computer here. But Student 2 could go in and just say, okay. And you can see it says Student 2 is typing down at the bottom. I think I have some documents that may help. And as you can see, there's a little notification that pops up. That notification is configurable, so you don't always have to have notifications pop up. And there's also going to be some stuff, if they are mentioning you, that will show up in the activity feed as well. The next part about this is going to be files. So if Student 2 or if I decide I want to share a file, here's a file I've been working on. They can just use the little attach button at the very bottom. Again, nothing special here. This is going to be very similar to most other programs. I'm going to start showing you in a second where this Teams application really differs from the rest of them. And you just wait for that. You can see it starting to upload there. Once it's uploaded, you can send it. And there you go. The file's been successfully sent during that chat. You can also see at the very top, there's another button up here. So anybody from the group of people that you're currently talking with can go to that files. And what's nice about this is actually, if you know anything about SharePoint, what's happening while you are sending your files here is that it's storing it all on its ad hoc SharePoint server. So behind the scenes, what you're not seeing, you don't even really have to think about it, is Microsoft is integrating Microsoft Teams with SharePoint so that your files are always stored. Also, if you pull the file off of here and you start working on this file, just by clicking on it and modifying it and that sort of thing, it's going to be up to date so that the people that you're currently chatting with are definitely seeing the updated version of that file. Okay. Now, with this, on the top right-hand side, the only last thing I wanted to show you here with the chat, well, sorry, I should show you a couple of other things. With the chat, you also have your different importance levels. So you can see at the very bottom, there's a delivery option, so important or urgent. And you can see that's going to be a message marked with as important. And urgent will actually notify users every 2 minutes for 20 minutes. The other things you can do is you can actually use some formatting. So if you want to actually format your text, you can see there's bulleted lists. You can do some highlighting here that you're seeing. You can bold, underline, that sort of thing. So very typical formatting options. But of course, Teams isn't all just business. So as you can see here, there are emojis down at the very bottom. You can also use GIFs. If you're familiar with GIFs, they're kind of like quick moving pictures. You can add those into your text messages. And then finally, you can also use things like your stickers here. Okay, so that is your text options. I'm just going to click on the little delete button to get rid of that. And I'm going to start a call with student 2. Well, I should say student 2 and student 4. So what's going to happen now when I click on that little phone button is it's going to call student 2. Student 2 is going to get that message and pick up the phone, hopefully. Just wait for that to initialize here. And I'm just going to mute the phone, the audio on this for now. And as you can see here, there's a few different options at the very bottom. When you are using that chat, everybody that was in that current group that you were chatting with was invited. So everybody got that little notification that somebody's calling you. So they can all just accept that chat. They can decide to use their video. So if I turn that camera on, you'll see that it'll actually show me at the very bottom right. My computer's being fast enough there. There's also audio, of course, mute or unmute. Hey, there I am. And there's my cat. I'm going to turn my camera off now, but you get the idea. Of course, if somebody was sharing with me, then it would be in this big area here. So I've got just the preview down at the bottom. And then finally, the last option here is to share. So if you click on that, you'll see all of your windows that are currently open, and you can choose which window to share just by selecting one of those windows. Okay. What's really nice about this Teams is not necessarily any of those generic features which come with a lot of other applications, but it's the persistent chat that you have here. So you can see there's a meeting chat as you're taking, as you're having that meeting with other people. You can say, we discussed a presentation to our ownership team, or something like that, and just come up with your different meeting notes, and you can send those as you are having the meeting. And so that afterwards, because everything's always saved, you're going to have those meeting notes just contained within the chat, and you can search on those a little bit later. The last little option that I want to show you here is going to be your participants. So if you decide, hey, you know, I've got student 1, 2, student 4 is supposed to be here but never picked up. But also, hey, we need, you know, Amy or something like that joining in this call because something's pertinent to their group. Then you can also just go in and type that name and invite them as you are taking the meeting. And they will also be added to the entire history of all of the text chat and all of the files and that sort of thing that have been shared previous and after the meeting has occurred. So you can see when I do end this meeting, takes a little time to leave that call. But when I do end the meeting, what's going to end up happening is it's going to show all of the meeting nights meeting notes, I should say, and give you some details about that meeting. Okay, so that's your ad hoc chatting. Your next little part to this is actually the namesake of this application. So it's going to be your teams. This is where things get really interesting. So teams are going to be very similar to your ad hoc, your informal chats, except for they are groups that are designed around specific processes rather than just groups of people, right? So what's going to happen here when you click on this, as you can see, I did come up ahead of time with different teams. So we have right now a project management team, a marketing team, and just a general coffee knowledge base. I'm going to show you at first the project management team. Underneath that project management team, you can see there are different groups. So there's just a general discussion. We also have a website development project that we're coming up with. A phony one, of course, and process improvements. And these are just examples here. So I can actually go in, for example, to my process improvements, and you can see all of the chat that's been happening throughout the process improvements section here. So you can see that we need to create some templates for project plans. Could you help with that? And I said, yep. That's fine, and I actually uploaded a file. What's nice about that is now everything to do with project management process improvements is going to show up in this Files tab up here. And because it's integrated, as I mentioned before, with SharePoint, you can actually come up with a folder system if you would like, just like any normal Windows folder system that you would like to have. So you just click on the New button, and you can see there's a little folder option right there. Or you can create brand new Word documents. As you're using these, you can actually click on the documents and edit them right in Teams. You don't have to go to a different application. The last little part that I want to demo about this is that you can also create new tabs with your documents in them or with other types of programs in them. For those of you asking questions, by the way, that's amazing. I love the questions. I'm going to get to them at the very, very end. So just hang tight. We will have question and answers at the very end. Keep sending them in, though. Keep typing out those questions. Okay. So just to get back onto where I was, as you can see, there's a little plus button up here. That plus button is going to show you all of your other programs, and they're not all just Microsoft programs either. I don't know if you recognize any of these programs, but you can actually add in and integrate all of these programs that you're seeing here into Microsoft Teams so that you can just use them within the application. You don't have to open up a separate application for it. Now, in this particular example, what I did is I actually added in Excel into Microsoft Teams. So I just added that, and I used this Gantt project planner as the basis for that Excel document. So I just click on Draft Excel Project Planner, give it a second to load. It's going to load Excel in there for you. And as you can see, this is actually an Excel document, just a nice fancy one, but it is an Excel document. And you can make modifications directly within Teams with the Excel document. And I show you all of this, by the way, in my Teams course that I offer. It's a 4-hour course. So if you do want to go into more detail about adding in those Microsoft documents, we're going to definitely cover that in the in the Teams course that we offer. More on that a little bit later. But as you can see at the very top, you've got a lot of, I guess not every single option that you would have in your Microsoft Excel full application, desktop application, but it does at least have some limited formatting and some limited things that you can do. You can also add in new functions. You can change around the values in the cells and that sort of thing. So all of that works right within Teams. As you're making changes, because this is in a central location, it's stored on SharePoint, as I mentioned. It's happening all in the background for you automatically. So as you're making changes, other people are also, anybody that is involved in that team will also see the changes that you're making to this project planner that you have here. Okay. But that's not all with the teams. There's other things that you can do with the teams. You've also got something called a wiki. So at the moment, you've got I've got an example here for a general coffee knowledge base, which is just a team that I created. And you can see I've only got one group underneath that. It's just general. And in that group, there's not been any discussion so far, but we do have a nice big wiki. So I created this nice wiki. It is a default tab that comes with Microsoft Teams. And you can see, by the way, I just copied and pasted this from Wikipedia. I'm not that smart. I didn't come up with all of that text. But as you can see here, you've got your pages at the very top. You've got your sections below that. So I can click, for example, on coffee history, and then I can go to the different sections within that wiki. Now, I use this as general coffee information, but a lot of people actually use wikis as like notebooks, right? So you just have team notebooks that you can have, or you have them as process documents, right? So you can have a wiki with just different processes that you put up, and these could be your official processes for your team and that sort of thing. Now, the next thing I want to show here is going to be our calendar. As I was mentioning before, the calendar does integrate with other calendars. So anything that you have currently on your Outlook calendar, I think I saw that question come through. Anything that comes on your Outlook calendar is what's going to be shown here. So as long as it's part of your calendar, that's what's shown in the Teams calendar here as well. At the very top right, you can see there's a new meeting button. That's going to be where you're going to create your new meetings. I'm just going to open one that is currently created. So I'm going to click on that one. And it looks very much like a Microsoft Outlook meeting that you would send, just a normal one. There are some differences, and I'm going to point that out right now. So at the very top, you do have your meeting name, so the weekly blog post discussion. You do have the attendance. You do have your time. You do have the room, and you do have the meeting details. Now, where this does differ, this particular meeting, is you can see there's a join button at the very bottom. So that's going to provide a link. That's mostly for the people that are using Outlook and don't use Teams as often, because they can actually just click on that link, which will bring them into Microsoft Teams and just start the meeting for them. But you can also click on the join button up here if you're already in Teams. So both will do the same thing. The other part is that this is linked to a particular group. So you can see I've got my marketing team. And because this is a blog post discussion meeting, I've got it tied to my blog post discussion channel. So that means that if you can remember, we had the chat on any of the meetings that we had. So any video calls or any audio calls or anything like that, you had that chat. All of that chat information, as you're discussing and as you're taking meeting notes and all of that, that's going to end up in the blog post discussion channel that I created. So if I go over back to my Teams, I did this ahead of time, by the way. I actually started a meeting, created some sample notes, stopped that meeting, and I just want to show you the output of that here. So if I go back into my Teams, and then I go over to we have some blog post options, blog post discussions underneath my marketing team. I click on that. And as you can see at the very bottom, the last thing that happened was I started this meeting. The meeting ended in 1 minute and 2 seconds. But if you click on the see more, and the replies, sorry, that's the one I wanted to. The replies, as you can see here, all of the discussion, so I think our next one should be related to coffee roasting. That's the discussion that happened during that meeting. So it actually keeps it all in a nice, convenient spot for you anytime that you have a meeting that's linked to a particular group. Okay. So I've now went over so far our teams. I've now went over the files, how they're up on SharePoint. I've went over a wiki, and I've also went over meetings. The last couple of parts about this before I go off to questions is just your calls and your files section here. So the calls are going to be just a general calls button. And you can see that you've got some speed dial, just adding people kind of like your favorites. You've got contacts, just a global list of all your contacts. You've got history of stuff that's happened, so you can see all the calls that you've had. And then you've also got voicemail, which I currently don't have set up, but you can also add in voicemail as an option to Teams. And then finally, your files is just going to be a list of all files that have been sent your way. Okay. Now, I'm going to give a few seconds just to go over some questions. But before I go over questions, I'm just going to wait for people to start posting some more questions. I'm just going to remind you that talk to us using the Ottawa and Quebec line. You can see at the very top, or across the rest of Canada is at the very bottom. And just a couple of little things about our website as I'm waiting for people to add in their questions. So let me just pop over to Chrome. Click on that first one here. Oops. Seems like these applications are taking a bit of time to wake up. All right. Well, just getting started. Here we go. There we go. We do have this month special. We've got 2 webinars happening this month because we thought we would throw in a Teams one for those people working from home. We also have blog articles here, and you also have some YouTube videos, and we have a lot of tips and tricks that most of them are actually done by my excellent colleague, Christine, and she's done a bunch of tips and tricks in Excel and that sort of thing. If you do click on the course list button here, it's going to bring up a list of everything. So you can click on that course list button, just generally click on that course list button, and then it will bring up a list, as you can see here, of all of our training. And you can go to our calendar or our list view to show different list options. In JN Software, in that website, if you happen to want to go to that one instead, it's going to be much the same thing, except for the schedule is going to be underneath this orange banner that we have across the top, the upcoming course schedule. We also have the free webinars, the blog, contacting us, and the YouTube channel up here as well. And that will bring, the schedule will bring you just to a PDF document of our schedule here. And the very last thing I want to show you here is going to be the Teams course, because this is what we're offering starting this week. Actually, we're offering public classes on the Teams course, and we've been doing it for a while now. And you can see the upcoming dates are over here. It is $295, but if you do get a hold of us by calling us or emailing us first, we do have a special promotion going on. So you just have to mention, and this one's my personal favorite, you have to mention Jesse is the best. If you mention that, we will give you the course for $249 plus HST. Going on here. I'm trying ahead, but is there a way to get notified when someone posts something in a group using the @tagging feature? Yes, so that's exactly right. If I go back to my your settings are going to be found up and underneath your profile information, the top right. The settings are going to specify which types of notifications that you get. For the most part, if you are using the Teams, and again, it's just taking a little bit of time to pop up here, but for the most part, if you are using the Teams and you use that feature that I was talking to you about, so I come in here and I click on @student2, and I click on that person's name, and then just whatever text you want here, sample text, and hit enter. What's going to happen is that this is going to pop up very likely a banner. Again, it does depend on their settings that they've got. So if they do have a setting against banners, then they won't see a banner. But for the most part, they will see a banner. And even if they don't see a banner, they will have their name pop up here. So you can see this is what it looks like. Student mentioned you, and then you can click on that. It'll be in the activity feed as well. So that one goes out to Christian. The next one, is there a way to confirm all who attended prior to Teams meeting? Separate from who was invited, but who actually called in. Okay. So in Teams, not so much. But in Outlook, there's actually a way to manually do that. So you do have to use Outlook, and then there is an attendance form in Outlook. I don't know if I can. I don't have an Outlook example set up, and all of my Outlook meetings is all fairly work-related. But there is an Outlook option. I might have to get back to you on that one for a specific example of who showed up and who didn't within Outlook. There is a question from Afran2. Where would you find your files on SharePoint? So that is a really good question. So I did check that out. If I go into my Teams here and you take a look at your files, you can see there's a button up here called Open in SharePoint. It actually sets up a SharePoint site automatically for you, so you don't really have to think about it too much. But if you clicked on Open in SharePoint, it would open up SharePoint and show all of your documents. I have a question from Rochelle. Can only one person be in the same file at the same time when making changes to it? So the answer to that is no. And depending on the application, it will handle changes differently. Just because I do teach the Excel training quite a bit, I do know how that one works specifically. Every application works a little bit differently. But in Excel, what ends up happening is as you're making changes to cells, it actually locks that cell that you're currently editing from being changed with other people. So it will lock down a cell by cell as you're making changes with other people. Now, in other things like Word and that sort of thing, they have other features in terms of like merging changes together. So Microsoft actually tries to merge those types of documents together just in different ways. And it actually is a little bit difficult to tell which changes it's going to be in. Whoever saves it first will probably not get their changes through. The person that changes it last or saves it last will get their changes through. So yeah, you can make changes together. Of course, that does create some conflict sometimes, and depending on the application, it'll conflict in different ways. Okay, that's a very generic answer, Rochelle. I hope that answered your question a little bit. From Maurice, we have, does pivot tables work in Teams? Excel pivot tables work in Teams? And to that, I just say yes. You can see over here, there's an insert button, and there's a button here for pivot tables. So you can actually use pivot tables directly from Teams. And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing any of these names incorrectly, but from Jacinth, I think that's the correct pronunciation. Does your business need to have SharePoint to use this since documents are saving in SharePoint? So yes, basically what happens is with SharePoint specifically, okay, let me start that again. In Teams, if you have a Teams license, it's because you have an Office 365 license. So any Teams license does come with the Office 365. And it does come up with its own SharePoint site. So whether or not you use SharePoint, it actually just creates a SharePoint site in the background for you. Again, not something you have to think about too much, because it does it all automatically. And in terms of where those are stored and that sort of thing, that would be more for your IT people to look into in terms of the exact location for the SharePoint sites being stored. because I do know that you can store them in different locations depending on your current and your personal work setup. Okay. From Pat Sissons, we have, can you invite people to a meeting who don't have MS Teams subscription? Is there a free viewer of some kind? Oh, that's a really good question. Huh. I don't believe so. I'd have to take a look into that. Maybe I can do a quick Google search on that one. I actually don't know the answer to that one. So let me just do a quick Google search. But as I'm kind of multitasking here, I'll just take a look at the next question down, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so the next question down is from Kimberly. I don't seem to have the calendar function on my Teams. Is there a way I can add this? So for you, Kimberly, I just wanted to mention that the calendar function is going to be based on your permissions. So if you don't have permissions to that calendar function, then you'll have to contact the person who administrates your Microsoft Teams license, and they should be able to help you out. All right. Teams meeting with non-Teams users. Okay. And from Jay Witt, I have, my office doesn't have our Outlook calendars synced with MS Teams. How would I schedule a meeting in MS Teams without having the calendar invitation synced? I believe you do have to have those two. It's going to happen both through the exact same user. So if you are looking to get it to work with Outlook, I actually, when I did set everything up, I set up Teams before I set up Outlook for my user, and it was just giving me a whole bunch of errors. So that leads me to believe, just for you, Jaywitt, that if you don't have your user using both Outlook and Teams, that the calendar function will work. You'll probably get a bunch of errors. And again, that's just from my own experience. Okay, so going back to Jay Witt's question, my office, sorry, not Jay Witt's question. Going back to Pat Sisson's questions, can you invite people who don't have a Teams subscription? Apparently, yes, you can. So it's just going to bring you to, if they do click on the link, it's going to bring up a page, a login page. You will have to have at least a Microsoft account, and then it will have a web version of Teams for those meetings. There was another question from Maurice going, do you set up a single team with one person to utilize Teams with one person? No, so the whole idea behind Teams, and I'm sorry if I didn't, if I overlooked that part, is to invite multiple people to your team, meaning that your teams are going to be based on kind of group efforts with multiple people. So to invite people to the team, it's just a matter of clicking on the three dots that you see next to that team. And once that pops up, there will be an option. You can see there's an option to add member. So you can actually add members through that option there. There was a question from N. Lee. Can you split the screen so that you are in Teams meeting and looking at another doc such as email or Word? Yes, absolutely. So you can split screens with Teams pretty with any application in Windows. Actually, if you've got a Windows operating system, it's actually your Windows key that you have on your keyboard and then left, and that's going to split something to the left, as you can see that, and then you would just use any other application and you do Windows key and right to split it to the right. And I'm seeing that people are actually answering. to my questions. So thank you very much that you can. Some questions about some answers about the Teams, using Teams without the user. Yes, you can. So thank you for anybody who answered that you can. For sure, it does. The Teams application does have a web version, which means that anybody using Teams will be able to just log in using the web version. I have a question from. Oh, look, there's some questions going out to everybody. Okay, sounds good. I have a question from AJ. When you share documents in a meeting, is there a simpler way to move from one document to the next? It seems you have to share your screen to see a doc and unshare and reselect a document in order to choose another file. Oh, so no. So there is other ways to look through files. I had the very kind of complicated setup of actually having tabs that I set up for the different files, but you can actually just click on the file. So for example, I'm just going to go, I have other files set up here, and I can click on files. I'm going to look at all of the files that I've got, just click on, the blog post that I've got there. And that's going to open up the file for me. In order to get to the next file, all I have to do is I have to close down this file here and then go back. So there's a close button up at the very top right. And then you can go to your next file. I hope that answers your question, AJ. Next on the list, Christy J. To everyone, my understanding is whatever permissions you give to a team, then the channel inherits the permissions. Can you independently add to a channel without adding it to a team? So you can. So the permission, you are completely correct, Christy J, in that your permissions in the team are inherited by all of the groups or the channels underneath that team. So that is going to be specific to the team. Now, in terms of your files, I wonder if there's a way to, I haven't actually looked into the way to limit the permissions to a given file or to a given group. So let's just see, manage channel. Let's just see here. So there are some limitations. As you can see here, I've got who can start a new post and who can moderate the channel moderation and that sort of thing. Although that right now, for whatever reason, I don't seem to have permissions to set those permissions. But as you can see, there are some permissions that you can add in there. Okay. Does anyone know how to add permissions for Outlook Calendar in MS Teams? For the Outlook Calendar in MS Teams. So for JWIT, when I set this up, I set it up just using my Student One account. So then when I set up Outlook, it automatically went between the calendar function and the Outlook calendar that you had. So it should automatically happen as long as you have the calendar function enabled in Teams. So just talk to your administrator for getting that set up. So the next question is for E. Whalen. So sorry, can you explain the split screen again? Okay, so split screen is just a matter of clicking on the application in general, and there's a Windows button. It's actually at the very bottom of your keyboard if you have a Windows keyboard. Most keyboards are Windows keyboards. And there's a little 4 squares there. So if you hit that Windows key and then left, that's just going to split its screen to the left. And then you just click on a different application and use the Windows key and then right, which will split it to the right-hand side of your screen. So I hope that answers your question, E. Whalen. Oh, and Chris was explaining exactly what I just explained. So thank you, Chris. Is there an admin course for MS Teams? The admin courses for MS Teams, I don't have on the docket for now. I can definitely ask our our ownership team if they are going to offer an admin course for the MS Teams. So as far as I know, we don't have one at the moment. More just an end user training. Sorry, from first name, last name. There's a question. I can't unhide a Teams chat using the search function. So I'm not sure what you mean by that there. Can't unhide a Teams chat using the search function. So first name, last name, whoever put their name as that, can you just maybe rephrase the question? Oh, my understanding is you can't delete, but you can hide. Okay, so when you're in your chats, if you mean hiding particular chat messages that you've got here, all of your options are on the right-hand side. So for first name, last name, you can see that if you have permissions to, you can edit or delete the message that you have added. To delete an entire chat, I don't believe that's possible, but I haven't actually looked. You can leave. Leave means that you'll no longer have access to it, but it'll still be there in the cloud. And there is a hide button here as well. So that's the hide option. So it's underneath the three dots next to that chat. So let me hide it. And I'm not seeing it either, now that you mention that. So I'd have to take a little bit of a deeper look into that. Just as a quick workaround, though, in case there's no unhide button that you can find, you can have somebody else that's in that chat just re-add you to the chat. It will still show you the history and everything. Alrighty. If there's any more questions, I'd urge you to put them in now because we're just getting to the very end of our time. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. I'll keep it open just for one or two last minute questions, but I do want to just say thank you so much for joining us today. I do appreciate you being here, and I do appreciate everybody staying safe out there. So make sure to stay safe and stay healthy for sure. Thanks so much. One last question. Is there any way to remove for privacy reasons? Any way to remove what? Sorry, first name, last name. And thanks so much for everybody thanking me. Chats, files, meetings. Again, that's more of an admin thing to do. So I'd have to take into the look at the admin things because I do know that everything is supposed to be persistent. So you have to be fairly careful as to who you add to which chat and that sort of thing. The whole idea is to not be able to delete these things, but depending on what you do choose, like your files and that sort of thing, there's always options up at the top right. There's always like a three dots for files, for meetings, for chats, that sort of thing. And all of your options that you have available to you are there. So you just have to explore that and just see what you have available to you. And then aside from that, the rest of it's administrative in terms of giving you permissions to delete. I'm not going to read that one out, Chris, but thank you for that.
From Pat Sissons, how do you get to the admin console? That just generally, I'll just answer that in general terms. Your admin console is part of an Office 365 dashboard. So once you do have administrative rights to that 365 dashboard, you'll be able to access it through that. I just don't have permissions to my Office 365 dashboard to be able to show you. Sorry about that, Pat. All right, I'm going to end the meeting. Thanks so much, everybody.